So there was a potential piece that was right along our marina that a group was offering a rights of first refusal, but they think they're just going to keep the property for a while. They're not putting it on the market yet.
Oh,
But
interesting.
if it does come back up again, I might bring that to you. But
Yeah.
I think Roddy and I were happy to not have to bring one more thing for discussion tonight.
I'm
So
glad they thought of doing that. That's a great.
yeah.
Cool.
But we'll start off with an important update on the YMCA lease with Roddy and Matt and our friends from Friends in Action, and I think the Music Institute. Actually, no, it's just Music Institute's here as well. So Roddy can kind of give you a brief update on where we're at with the lease, and we'll go from there.
Hello. So last Monday we met, the folks over my left shoulder here, and I up the Moore Center to discuss progress on moving forward with the new lease structure up there. I provided you all with a spreadsheet that was basically just as best we could do to kind of show what anticipated cost of occupancy would be. And these costs are all annual, so they reflect the full year of occupancy costs at the Moore Center. Just to give you a couple of quick reference points, attached in the memo, we derived at the cleaning costs by assigning 5 cents per square foot. That would be the cost to do the cleaning twice weekly for the spaces that would be allocated to each tenant. Common area maintenance you're talking bathrooms, hallways, high traffic areas. We estimated that to have to be done 3 times a week because of the increased traffic and the nature of those spaces. 5 cents per square foot is like bottom of the barrel. You're not going to find anybody to do cleaning services any cheaper than that. So that's what we went with. And you can see all those costs on the spreadsheet on the second page. One thing that did come up based on the way we broke out all the square footage, the Ellsworth Community Music Institute reported that they often rent a room at the hourly rate whenever they have overlap in their space. They pulled up their numbers, and that would be about $8,000 year to date that they've spent on renting rooms in a short-term basis. So basically, they're already paying more than what their allocated footprint would be if we just gave them that one room annually. So overall, and I don't want to speak too much, because I want the folks who are representing the different organizations to get a chance to speak. Looking at the numbers as they are on that spreadsheet, pretty much every tenant in the building expressed some pretty legitimate concerns about the viability of their programs moving forward if they're going to assume 100% of those costs. So I think it's time to have a conversation about, the services they provide, what they're worth to the community, and where we want to go from here, pretty much. So with that, I'll let the folks behind me say their piece and kind of present.
Before you do that,
Yep.
who's cleaning for 5 cents a square foot?
That would be the city employees.
And I should note the cost estimates here and the square footage for the building, and I know with Friends in Action and the YMCA, what we're really looking to do here is, and Councilor Beal, what it costs the city, not that we will charge these pieces, but what it cost it to be like a net, a net loss. So the cost of the organizations that are there, how much square footage they have, and how much does it cost to operate the building. We worked with also a local person who does this for the private sector in their organization on how do you figure out the CAM fees, how do you figure out the cleaning fees, how do you figure out a bunch of these pieces. And I think for a couple of these organizations, that'll be, to charge them cost for what they're at. I think particularly Friends in Action, that's going to be a huge increase. They haven't had an increase in about 10 years, so this isn't necessarily the proposed where we want to be, but this is kind of the proposed how to split it between the organizations, including the school, which is now taking over a piece of the building, and how do we get the fees moving forward so that it's right size for the organizations, or at least it's very transparent into how much the city is subsidizing for those organizations to be in the building moving forward. And really also to focus too on, yes, this is the cost, that is a metric to talk about, but there's also impact. It's a huge metric that we get as a community service, and always a reminder of kind of what the design and inception of this building was Ellsworth didn't have a community center, and the services that are provided for these seniors and for our childcare nonprofit providers, for those of us who have gone in the building a lot lately and just see all the amazing work they do. These are enormous community services for the people of Ellsworth, for our senior citizens to be able to have that level of activity and, matched with the childcare, matched with the music. It's really a wonderful community space, and we're trying to get the costs a lot more transparent, but we're also just really so happy and thankful for these nonprofit providers to provide this amazing service. Do you want to switch to?
Yeah. Go ahead, John. You're fine.
Good evening, I'm John Lindquist, the Executive Director of Friends in Action for a little while longer. I just if you take the packet that was distributed, I just wanted to remind everybody what our mission is, and it's to help older people and people with disabilities live with a good, strong quality of life, or do the best we can to make that happen. The mission functions supporting that are done at the Senior Center, and the administrative services, we do the administration of all the services that we provide: transportation, home support for chores, friendly calls and visits, home maintenance, heat assistance, and services navigation. The services navigation is how people find, who the right government agency is to support whatever need they might have. We provide a lot of wellness opportunities, exercise programs, a special class for clients with neuromuscular disabilities, blood pressure and vaccine clinics, foot care services, and a heating and cooling center. We fight food insecurity. Going back over to the transportation, we deliver a lot, but we also serve 2 meals a week and deliver commodity boxes as well as meals for churches. And then quality of life, we have numerous activities going on at the Senior Center. In our operation, there are 536 residents of Ellsworth that are registered with us to receive services, and that's the senior services. There have been more than, and this is a very quick count, 8,000 visits to the center to take part in the various activities. And we're talking about just visits to our activities in the center. So that was all by way of just a kind of a reminder, because I think everybody on council knows, has heard most of that before. But on the space cost, currently we're paying $22,000 a year, $22,000 and some hundreds of dollars. And that's all we pay for in the Moore Center. The new spreadsheet that Roddy talked about bumps our rent to $58,000, which is more than twice what it was. And then we have to start paying for our use of the auditorium, or the shared use spaces, the auditorium, the kitchen, the conference room, the atrium, and the gymnasium, which gets our total cost at $20 an hour. And nobody has struck the rent, what the precise rental fee would be. But if you assume it to be $20 an hour, it gets us up to $108,000 a year just in rental costs, which is something that I just don't see any way that we can come up with that much money. We're currently have a budget of about $314,000, and we're running a deficit of about $17,000. We think we have places to make that up, but we don't have any spare change lying around. So what we need to do going forward is FIA has to look hard at finding places where we might be able to save some money without unduly cutting programs. Look at those programs that are less popular, less utilized, maybe get rid of some of those. maybe some of the programs would be better in a different venue. The problem with that is if we take something and move it, it leaves an empty hole, which makes or may make some of the distributed costs or the allocated costs go up. We do think that it's very reasonable to ask the city for some sort of a subsidy. Haven't hit on anything like a number yet. And there's a possibility of changing some of the allocations of the maintenance, cleaning and maintenance fees. And all of those things are, it's not one of them that can solve the problem. It's all of them in combination. So that's what I wanted to present. Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Matt Montgomery. I'm the CEO of the Down East Family Y. First off, I want to thank Roddy for putting all this work in, because I know it's been kind of eye-opening. I think if anything, this has been a good exercise to help show not only the value of the center, but the true cost of the center, a lot of which, again, the Y has kind of had the burden of for the last many years. We're obviously very thankful for the place, the space that we have there, because we couldn't run a lot of the programs that we operate without that space. That being said, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask the city of Ellsworth to invest in the Moore Community Center. I understand, obviously, there's a huge investment with debt services, but it is a community center. And it not only houses 3 great organizations that are doing services, offering services that the city can't or won't offer, but it's a community center. And it's also a place that, outside of the school, other city services are using that spot. So I think it's reasonable to expect some investment outside of the debt service from the city of Ellsworth in order to keep that center open and available, not just to the Y and Friends in Action, and Ellsworth Community Institute, but to the community. If you look at the city of Westbrook is probably the closest city with a similar size community center. It's quite a bit larger, actually. But the investment from the city is significant. It's almost $500,000 a year to keep that center going. They have long-term tenants. They also have short-term tenants and one-time rentals. They have a pool. It's quite a different center. But it's an investment. It's a decision that's made every year by the city of Westbrook to keep that center going. And I'd ask this council to consider the same thing with the Moore Community Center, because it is a great space for the community.
Hi, I'm Nancy Coulter, and I'm here with Ellsworth, representing Ellsworth Community Music Institute. We've been in existence, as you all know, since the very beginning of the Moore Center, and it has been a wonderful home for a music school. And we all know that the performances and the lessons draw people into Ellsworth, and so it really enhances the cultural value of Ellsworth as a community. And I think it actually elevates lives. I don't say that lightly. I think that music lessons, we know, enhance brain activity, and all we want really is to expand our community so we can do more of the same. So you have in front of you a list of individual, for example, individual lessons that were offered in 2024, 1,534. We have more people asking every day, and we have waiting lists because there are spaces that we would like to rent within the Moore Center that aren't available. We are always adjusting. The great thing is that we have a fabulous partnership with these 2 other organizations. We feel really lucky, and we feel grateful to the city. And we thank you for your support for our monthly concert series, you have in the little packet an invitation to the next one, which is this coming Friday, which is at 1 o'clock if you should like to drop by. The one thing that I will say is that we keep our lessons as low as possible, and we try to pay our very fine faculty as well as we can. And it's been a long time since they've had a raise. The last time we increased tuition fees, we lost 1/3 of our students, just like that. And even though we really went to bat for those students and tried to get tuition scholarship funds to offset their expenses. So if we have to increase our rental costs, I'm worried that it's an existential threat to our organization. And so I'd like you just to please be sensitive to that. And if there's any way the city can help by offsetting costs, it would be greatly appreciated. Okay. Do you have any questions? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we'll have some for Roddy. I would just kind of note, I think, with the previous mandates from council, we're going to be coming back to the city council meeting too, so a lot of this is sort of to start thinking about this as we look towards October, but towards November, we would really like to have this solidified by the end of the year. And to me, now you see kind of more true costing on what the organizations are. You can see that, like to bring Friends in Action, in my opinion, after 11 years of really no increases there, to bring them from that 22,000 to a much, would be really tough in year one and a big surprise, and I wouldn't want to threaten any of the work that's done there. So how do we work, could we stagger that over 5 years of the increase to kind of start to get back up there? And so it's not just a big bump. Could we lessen the impact of the increase? I think that's, where we also want to be, but also for the YMCA and for the Music Institute, these are kind of rate changes that we're also looking into. How do we rent all these spaces out more? You can see, I think one of the interesting pieces here is that Music Institute square footage that they have locked down all the time is only 250 square feet. So that's only pulling in 24, or under this amount, about 3,745.78. But they're also renting spaces for about 8,000. And, when they rent that space, they lock that space down. So are there ways that we can work with the Y or Friends in Action to, here's what your locked down all the time space is, but are there other spaces that we could rent out more to kind of maximize revenue in the auditorium and other places? And Roddy, maybe you could talk a little bit more about how that could kind of reduce overall costs for everybody too.
Yeah, because the idea is if an organization comes in and rents one of the rooms, that's not a tenant there. That the rental fee that they pay, like before anybody gets their monthly statement on what their cost is for that month, the rental income immediately goes to the monthly cost and drives down everybody's price. The other thing to keep in mind, if you look at the room rental fee, I think the utilities cost for room rentals is $16,800 annually. Your cleaning maintenance, your cleaning cost, your maintenance cost, your garbage disposal, all of those costs would be built into whatever the rental room rate was. So you don't need to add an additional line item because it's already been taken into consideration. Something that I'm actually just realizing now as we talk about this, if we get to a point where we've made more in rental fees than what the cost to own the space is and we're turning a profit, that can immediately go into reducing their costs at the rest of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have $16,800 in utilities annually for the unallocated spaces, and then you have your CAM costs. But if John comes in and says it's going to cost him nearly $50,000 on top of his monthly allocated space lease payment to rent a room that he needs in a one-off situation, we're going to get to a point where we're already generating revenue beyond what the cost is to operate the building. So that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Maybe they hit a point where it's like, nope, we've paid for the cost for the month. We don't need to collect room rental fees from the tenants anymore. So just something to consider. The other, and I don't want to put words in Michaela's mouth, but this is a comment she made earlier today, and it really kind of resonated with me. If we price these guys out of their home, the services they're providing still need to be offered to the city and its residents. So really think about, like, what is the actual value of the service they're providing in their absence, what would the cost be to the city to step in and continue to provide that service? They're talking about like when people's water lines freeze, they get the phone call before anybody else and help them find the solution. When their heat gets turned off, they help them find the solution. When they're fighting food insecurity, they help them find the solution. What would the cost be to the city if they're not there to catch those problems before they become a more dire situation?
If I could, and I know I'm on my way out, but.
You are still on the council, so please weigh in.
I think it would be really, I'm looking at these numbers from all the different organizations, they're not adding up. And so, like Friends in Action is saying they're paying for their space, plus auditorium, plus the kitchen, plus the gym, plus the conference room, plus the atrium, which are all spaces that everyone shares. And so I'm trying to figure that piece out, and then looking at your spreadsheet. I think it would be really helpful if you created a budget. So, instead of, because you also need to think of the future, because we're going to have repairs and things in the future
Yeah.
that the purpose of having the profit or the extra amount would be to put that in some type of a trust so that when the roof needs to be repaired or when the equipment needs to be repaired, that it's taken care of, and we're not going back to the tenants and say, hey, we need more money from you, or the taxpayers. So I think if you took what you have here and made a combined budget for what you expect for rentals from outside, because we know, I mean, it happens, and there's enough, there has to be over the 10 years enough information that you can kind of do an estimate. And then what they actually use and what it's shared. I mean, you could do something, even for the conference room. I know there's outside organizations that use it, plus the Y uses it, plus everyone else uses it. How do we look at that expenditure and understand where it's coming from,
Yeah.
and then create a budget from that? And I really think if you can do that to the council, it'll be a lot easier to understand, because
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Just to speak to the auditorium, the gymnasium, and the atrium, in the conference room as well, those are spaces that are not allocated to anybody, because any organization can come in and say, I want to rent that space.
Oh, okay, because
So
the
when,
Friends in
when,
Action
when they're
has-
saying they're gonna pay for it, he's adding up the hours that they use that auditorium, which is a rental space.
Oh, and that's the
Currently,
that's
they're
the
not
$20
paying,
an hour.
they're not paying that room rental fee when they want to use the auditorium because they're a tenant there. But if they're taking away from our ability to rent that to somebody else, do we need to collect that cost? So
And-
that's what he's
Oh,
going
okay,
at
so
is-
that's what the $20 an hour is. Oh, okay.
Right, this is kind of what they could expect if they were trying to rent those places.
Gotcha.
And if you look in this sheet, and again, yeah, I totally agree on the budget piece. We'll get it into our formats for a typical budget, just have the Moore Center as its own piece.
Yeah.
With all these things. This is really just kind of a discussion on, previously we talked about square footage a lot. Like, this is exactly how much square footage people are totally owning. When you consider the common area management spaces and like these other ones that this is what the city is going to kind of clean. Folks would be responsible for their own spaces. And if we look at kind of, thanks to Matt and what the city's been doing for utilities and other pieces, if we just wanted to kind of divide CAMs by actual book space and utilities and maintenance fees of the building, like this is what we'd have to charge everybody, which kind of establishes our baseline.
Yeah.
And can see like, oh gosh, that's going to be a big increase. And now we can go into the next step of that.
I just think if you have estimates, so, I mean, this is $20 an hour, but if you know how much this is costing you, and also take into consideration that mortgage on that building is being paid by TIF dollars, so it's not a dollar for dollar change, account to the budget. So if we didn't have that mortgage, we would have TIF dollars to go to another project, but it does not change the taxpayer payments at all, because that's automatic pulled out for other things. So I think taking that into consideration when you're looking at presenting a budget to the council and then saying, this is what we need, this is what we would charge, but we think that we might be able to offset the $20 an hour for the tenants because we're gonna have this. You see what I'm saying? And then try to make it, I don't know if you need to make it a zero sum, but to make it, to show how much you're talking when
that's-
you say giving the funds
The
in.
conversation we had Monday pretty much led us right to that there's, to have this come back as a zero-sum proposal is not going to be doable for these organizations if we want them maintain the services they're providing.
I think knowing the zero sum is important though, so it's like,
Yeah, so we can
this
try to
is
get
the
there.
investment.
Yeah,
right?
so we can try to get there, but again, when you're looking at that mortgage, I don't know if you're taking that into consideration, but that's not without, that's just with the cost of the building, okay?
So that worksheet is solely what the occupancy costs are to maintain the building.
But I agree, looking at this as the first step, what is the cost? What would it be? And then have the conversation from there about the value.
Yep.
But I think we've talked before about infrastructure. There's the hard infrastructure like roads, and then there's the social infrastructure that makes Ellsworth and supports communities just as much as roads and sewer do.
Yep.
And so having that conversation, once we know what the numbers are, and then look at, are there spaces for additional rental? Is the rental maxed out? I mean, for home, where people are home-based, those kinds to explore. But this is really good as the starting point for knowing what are we
Yeah.
dealing with, what is it? Since the workshop purpose is so that you get a feel for where the council is, I see this as the starting point, and then we start talking about what is the value, how do we acknowledge it, get public input on the value of that as we do with the budget process. So this has
And
been really helpful.
to
And I
clarify
do
the-
agree, just a clean budget.
To clarify, the utilities on there at 80,000 is roughly an adjustment of what they paid last year. And then where they were at year-to-date in August when I received the information from Matt and then extrapolating out what the next several months would look like. So that, I mean, the numbers we're working with they're based off of real solid numbers over the past couple of years. We're not just like taking a shot in the dark at them.
I do
So,
like that when it comes to numbers. So thank you. It's
Yeah,
my
and we-
favorite kind of numbers. I
We'll
love it.
probably have to, once we're pretty dialed in, we're probably gonna have to pull this out of the multi-workshop and just have a
Yeah.
focus
Yeah.
on here,
Everyone on
here's the
this.
budget, here's what the staff's recommendation is, here's what Y and Friends in Action and Music Institute feel like is reasonable once we finish those kind of negotiations. But we did want to kind of just have this moment to say, hey, here's, based on the square footage, here's kind of what it's costing. It's, to get to that zero sum is going to be, difficult in these organizations. But we also need to kind of start with that as a baseline so that we can express this is what it's costing the city to subsidize these amazing services, which we get, you see that 300,000+ that Friends in Action, there's no private organization that's looking to just jump in here and provide all those amazing services. These are community nonprofit work that's absolutely essential to the fabric of this community. I know a lot of nonprofits are struggling right now. A lot of nonprofits are scaling back services and not doing what, just read the news. So how do we keep these great things that are essential to this community thriving here at a cost that's also very transparent and not kind of $1 an hour, $1 a year, and other pieces. I think that's we're just trying to get a little more transparent with it too. Anything else from council?
Can you hear me? Yeah. I'd just love to echo the invaluable nature of this, especially now more than ever, a community center. But practically speaking, I'd love to hear, and forgive me if we've already talked capital improvements, but at some point in the future, I'd love to hear an estimate of what kind of energy efficiency savings could be had in the building. If there are massive, I'm sure they'd be terribly expensive, but if they could be funded somehow, if, heat pumps or energy efficiency windows, that sort of thing, if that would make a massive impact or not on the heating bill or whatever is the lion's share of the utility costs over there.
Yeah, we're currently working with an Energy Star program through the state of Maine. It's basically an energy benchmarking, energy efficiency, to kind of collect data, figure out where you're at with each one of your buildings in the city, and then they'll help you work on structuring a proposal to increase your efficiencies. And then Charlie's mentioned in the past, I think it's the tax exempt lease program, which might be an option once we identify where those cost savings could be realized. We could go after something like that. But right now, not just with the Moore Community Center, but with all of the city's buildings, I'm working with a bunch of different municipalities in the state to do that energy benchmarking program. And I can report out on that at a later date if you'd like.
Yeah, so if the school did something like that, it basically allows you to realize all the energy efficiency savings over 15 years up front. So our streetlight proposal is actually kind of in a similar type thing. Wow, that's actually going to cost us less. We get to do the project now. Doesn't affect our bonds, those types of things. So should be And we have the capital improvement program
Yes.
that we're working on too.
Yours were really hot. I'm gonna put them
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
We had a temperature report from the side of the table.
Yeah, we're having our San Diego summer, as I've been calling it. No rain, hot weather through October. So I think, well, maybe Roddy, you switch over to the sidewalk snowplow co-op purchase.
Yep, so at the last council meeting, the council approved, for lack of a better term, rejecting all the bids for the sidewalk plow. If Mike wants to back me up on this, I know he's here tonight. It sounded like all the bids that they received for the equipment left them with a lot of question marks about whether or not that equipment that was being offered up was the right tool for the job, and could it safely and effectively perform the work we were looking to perform. Thank you, guys. From prior experiences in my former world of employment, there was a multifunction tractor called the Ventrac. The thing's amazing. The price point on it puts it in a different class than some of the pieces of equipment that were being sought after in the original proposal. And working with Charlie, I looked up on Sourcewell, which is a cooperative purchasing program, and they already have a contract in place for government agencies and municipalities. There was like 78 or 80 pages of documentation that support the findings of their bid specs, the RFP, their reviews and comments. It went through a procurement specialist with Sourcewell. So basically, this agency's done all the work for us in the bid process. And then the city's procurement policy does allow for us to use cooperative purchasing contracts to streamline our purchasing process and avoid the whole bid process up front. The contract they have with Toro Ventrac guarantees us 8% under MSRP with an additional 5% discount on top of that for any accessories and attachments we wish to buy in the future. This piece of machinery would not only plow and treat all of our sidewalks, we could use it for all of our turf management needs, the parks and green spaces and ball fields. It has a boom mower that could maintain the sides of all the pedestrian and bike paths. It has a loader function, so you can use it to move materials. It's just a multifunction tractor that we could buy the base piece of equipment and all of the attachments to do just about everything we want to do in all 4 seasons for the $150,000 that was allocated previously simply for a sidewalk plow. So I'm looking for approval to move forward with that, empowering us to use the cooperative purchasing program to secure this piece of equipment.
Well, we can't approve anything at a workshop.
No.
I'm
Maybe I should step in here. One of the reasons I wanted to kind of, before we get to the meeting itself and ping me is kind of, I've read this ordinance, and this is one of the pieces that I've recognized over the last year and a half of like the sludge. The piece where we this just happened literally today. We have an open bid process, like it's 1976, and we're mailing in things, and people are, and there on 1A there was a crash, I guess, and it delayed. It was for balers and what was the other? And a butt fusion machine. And so we put it out to bid on this website. It's on our website. We sent it to MMA. We sent some other pieces. Some local vendors they send in mail. And wow, then we kind of heard about it. Somebody said they were late. It was coming in there. We opened some bidders. And then later on we found like, wow, that actually delayed a lot, 3 more bids. So now it's like, well, do we have to reject all bids, go back out for this? But there's, like most cities just have a digital bid process. And there's a Sourcewell, which has given us under like a massive government contract to get under bid. So to me, there's like I feel like a modernization process that probably needs to happen here too, which is, do we try to do a Sourcewell bid moving forward so that it's just faster? There's already a large government contract to get us underneath. And then maybe there's like an online digital bid process. Danielle, our new director of planning, we just had a vendor meeting today about an online open bid, sealed bid. It's all transparent. They're kept forever, so you can see all the past. And we could do like a Sourcewell, but also open it up for bid for a similar spec thing. If people can come underneath the government bid that are local vendors, maybe we would consider that. But so that we don't keep coming to this council meetings and, oh, we got to sorry, there was a question at the end, Pierre, because a lot of times we're just buying a piece of equipment that has ratings, that is the type of equipment we want to buy. We want to get the best process, we want to get the best price, we want to make sure people feel comfortable that nobody had a backroom deal to get it here. Sourcewell does that, in good measure, but we also want to offer some opportunities for local bidders. So that's why I brought it to council meeting, just to see what you all think about these things. if you'd be open to more of that process.
And isn't it kind of what we do with the salt bids and things like that too? We used to have the county planning commission do bidding for us, doing source bidding. Source bidding's definitely not new to the city by any means.
Yeah.
So, because it does, I mean, it's pretty hard to get bids from, like the trucks and things, we do try to stay local, but, as much as we can, but I don't see how it's a,
My question is, what's the downside?
exactly.
I think locals being able, because to me, it seems like we put out all these specs, and then we get like last meeting was a great example, right? The Bobcat, that thing, that's a new machine. Like the Volvo seemed like the better piece. We ended up getting there. We talked about it openly, but I could see a local having maybe that Bobcat was half as much, and we could buy two, and they're trying to get it off the lot, and we want to work with a local. That's why I feel like maybe we could do like a
Do both.
larger bidding, but then also say, hey, if you can beat this price and you're local, or you have a machine that's somewhat similar, this is what we really
That's
want.
not really,
So,
you gotta be careful of that, but
could we get, so again, purpose of the workshop is to get more information. I need to better understand what this process is that we're talking about. I don't understand what a cooperative purchase agreement is. So again,
Yeah.
if you could provide that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm gonna be the timekeeper again.
Love it.
That would be a piece I'd like to see
In a
before we
nutshell,
have it.
there's this agency called Sourcewell. They're out of Minnesota, and they go out and they put out massive RFPs that are
Okay, so
tailored
they're-
to the
they
needs of
do bulk
municipalities, and they do
purchasing.
all the work for you, and
Yeah.
all the information about what they're doing, their bid specs,
Okay.
their RFP, all the people who submitted proposals back to them. Everything is all in a clearinghouse on the website. You go in, you find the thing you want, you search, and it
Okay.
gives you everything, including the signed contracts that have already been executed by them and their procurement specialists.
So you kind of, you're getting a much more guarantee. I think the downside to me, and maybe we'll talk more, just now that I can hear some of the edges here on that local, how you still provide that opportunity, because it does seem like the way we're doing it now is just clunky, and it doesn't get us to, the right tool for the right job at the best price, which seems to be the intent, but this sort of paper, these things come out, something misses, we want to be transparent. And these online platforms, like you do a bid spec for salt, put it in there, and for the rest of your life, that bid a year or a month or two before, or 6 months, whatever you set it to, it'll auto send it out. Like, we won't be in this, ebony having to chase down people and opening them up and all this extra manpower and labor too. I think it actually could really streamline that as well.
So. Okay, thank you.
thanks, Roddy.
Great. On to Amanda with the water rate case increase discussion.
Hey. Good evening. Amanda Ray, Public Works Administrator. During the budget cycle, the Water Department requested to do a rate case study for a 5 to 7% increase in planning for the water treatment plant project. So tonight, I would just like to explain an important regulatory requirement under Chapter 69, how it impacts Ellsworth's water rates and why we are, instead of doing a 5 to 7% increase now, recommending a 1.5% increase with larger adjustment next year. So Chapter 69 requirement from the Maine Public Utilities Commission requires that a percentage of total revenue be allocated to public fire protection. The calculation is based on population served, gallons pumped. So for Ellsworth, this results in a 30% requirement. The calculation actually says that Ellsworth should be 36%, but PUC caps it at 30%. So 30% is the maximum allowed and is what most water utilities in Maine operate under. Currently, public fire protection revenue is 25% of total revenue. The Public Utilities Commission requires that with each rate case, the percentage be reset to the corrected amount. So if we go with the rate case, we would have to reset the public fire protection to 30%. What changed since the last rate case? Our last major rate increase took effect January 1, 2023. Since then, Ellsworth has added new metered accounts, increasing metered revenue by over 300,000. This is a positive development, but complicates the reset. To reset public fire protection to 30% by January 1 of 2027, because we were asking for a 2-year plan from our water rate case study. We would need to increase public fire protection by 20% January 1 of 2026 and 9% for January 1 of 2027. That equals about 145,000 annually for the two, like, by the time you get to the January 2027 rate. So it'd be 92,000 for the first year, 53,000 for the second year. But that would also mean no increase for metered and private fire because we have to reset that 30%. This creates a significant unbudgeted expense for the city. So to avoid the budget impact, we're recommending a 2-step approach. So doing a 1.5% increase, which does not require the full rate case study or the triggering that 30% reset. It's a modest, immediate adjustment, and it puts that public fire, pushes it a little bit. So the next budget cycle would be the 5 to 7% increase, and we're looking to do that as the rate case study, effective July 1 of 26. And the person that we've hired for the rate case study will be here to talk about that in November, I believe. So that allows us to reset the public fire protection percentage to 30% and gives time for the city to budget appropriately for the increase. So the ideal path forward is to accept the 30% allocation requirement and plan for the increase. However, if the city has major concerns about the $145,000 increase in public fire protection over the 2 years, we may need to rethink the strategy. So that's why we're offering asking for the 1.5 now.
Yeah, and I can't tell you that my thanks to Amanda who's our Public Works Administrator, but also formerly our Utilities Coordinator, and we've had a few meetings on this, a few that want to make my brain burst. You know, part of the reason we're moving forward with this proactively is because we have a $24 million new water treatment plant that's going to be for the future of Ellsworth and is going to be a huge upgrade for the city, but we don't want to have to necessarily crank rates on the city and every ratepayer all in one go. So we talked about it earlier in the budget season just as a backup on, hey, maybe we should start thinking about increasing our rates now, so and stocking away for the future so the ratepayer and the city doesn't have to be there. But when we talked to the consultant, there was a bit of a, actually, if you want to do an increase of 7% right now, you're automatically going to trigger this, like, city has to go up to 30%. And because of all the growth in the city, you're basically the only ratepayer you're going to pay more in year one is the city. Because everybody else at a 7% is going to be covered by the city. So there was like that's not exactly what we were intending to do. It's a very interesting system where it almost like, there might be an argument to be made if you want to save the city. Now, granted, the city is a taxpayer money. Don't do any rate case and just let it float. And then we get up to 30% and we start socking away money 3 years from now and just let it balloon. And we have a savings account to let the city help hold that impact. But for the ratepayer, they're going to see a huge increase. So we want to give them some time to cycle this in. In November, we're going to have a much bigger discussion on that. That's 7% or the 5%, the increase, what the impact would be. It's a very complicated discussion that we'll bring the consultant in for. But we do want to just move forward on the 1.5% in the near term. That's what we're going to bring to the October council meeting as sort of, the first step, which doesn't require a bunch of things. We know we probably need to do more than 1.5% in the future, but we don't want to necessarily trigger right away that going from 26 to 30%.
And so when you're looking at chapter 69, isn't it, it can't be less than 1 and more than 30, but does it have to be the formula or 30 at the max? Or can it be less than 30?
From my understanding, yeah, it is a between, I think it was like, it couldn't be less than 6 or more than 30, but Nick said most do the 30.
Right, but we don't have to do the 30.
Well, if you do a rate case more than 1.5%.
You have to reset, yeah, if we do a rate case, we have to reset the public fire protection.
No, I get that, but we
Yeah.
don't have to reset it at the maximum. They just said that most municipalities do.
Well, we're supposed to be at 36% according to the calculations, but they cap it at 30.
But you're saying, Michelle, that there might be a way we can just say, we want to stay at 26. Because we have,
Or move it to 27.
we have so much growth in the city that, like, to me, that's the weird thing, is like the growth punishes the city.
Exactly.
Even though you're adding more ratepayers on. Let me,
I think you just have to adjust it, but I don't think you have to adjust it to the maximum,
Okay.
really. I just would
We
ask.
can ask.
yeah, let me talk to the consultant. The way they were framing it was
I'm
like,
just looking at chapter 69, I don't think that's what it says.
yeah,
Okay.
he
We
was
can
much
ask.
more expert on these pieces, but
Yeah.
this would be, we'll, even though you won't necessarily be on in
No,
November,
but
we will
just-
definitely flag that as is it a requirement to go to
I
30?
didn't see what it looks like in your budget.
And so the papers I passed out was just what I just, fumbled through saying, but also a sample of the notice that would go out if we did the 1.5% increase that shows the actual increase. And then the other page is just it references the 6104B rate case. So I just threw that in there so you would know what that was.
There also is like an exemption process. You're allowed to like apply for one. I know the consultant was saying, so we could say, hey, we don't want to go up this much in 1 year, but
Yeah,
can we
and
do 2 or 3 years to get to the 30% over this period of time? And like the PUC could consider that as part of the plan. So maybe we can ask that question too on just, can we get to 27%?
Yeah. He said with the exemption, if we filed for the exemption request, we have to have a plan of how we're going to get to where we need to be.
But is that exemption for the budget, you mean, or budget or just?
For the rate
fire?
case.
Just for the, yeah. for the
So
rate
that
case.
my recollection as a consultant, we want to do more than 1.5%. We go, because there's like 3 different categories.
Yes.
We go into this category, we're going to have to bump to 30%. You can apply for an exemption, but, you have to say how you're going to get there over a few years. But this wrinkle you're talking about, well, maybe we don't have to be at 30. It sounded like in our conversation or discussion that we did have to get to 30, but let me, or we'd have to say how we're going to get there
Yeah.
to get the exemption from that. But those are
It's
great.
probably recommended to be 30 because we are at 36, but I think
Yeah.
just when you're looking at the rates for the payers, and then we got like a hotel coming, and we have all this new revenue coming, do the taxpayers need to pay that if the ratepayers are gonna?
Right, that's the other
Yeah.
thing with the
Notes I'm
rate
taking on
case.
that, yeah.
It doesn't take into account future growth, because we don't know what
Yeah.
that will look like yet, so it doesn't.
Because you get current construction, so you'll know that part of the growth.
Yeah, and we did a lot of analysis on that. Obviously, Woodard and Curran and sizing the plant is doing a lot of that analysis too.
Yep.
So very helpful. But another part of government where, let's just add 5 to 7%. We've got a 30% increase coming based on the debt service. Add 5 to 7%. This will be stagger it. Oh, it's a little more complicated than that. So
Yeah.
we'll come back in November.
So what I would find helpful as we move forward is an understanding of the intersection with the fire coverage, whatever the phrase is for it, that the public fire, how much of it is paid by, what percentage of either the property or the property tax payers are also metered water customers? And would that split in how we pay for this service between, if it's not covered here, it's been covered by the property taxes, so what happens?
So public fire is paid by the city, so that comes from taxes.
Right.
The water accounts, it's just over 1,500 water connections. 1512.
But out of how many? Out of 2,000, out of 8,000? Trying to get a sense of what part of Ellsworth's population and commercial space. So again, just
Yeah,
getting more of that background for when we move forward.
we'll come back in. I think
This is
there's-
really helpful.
There might be a sub-conversation on this. The chief and I, we've got I think
Yeah.
on Wednesday, we have a water distribution conversation just about, to me, it's been eye-opening, when all the public fire hydrants that we have, when we supply the water, but, how those just like how a private organization, if they want to build something, they have to pay for it, they have to service their fire hydrant, but then the city owns all these pieces, and we have to act like a ratepayer. We can't just give ourselves a break on these things, so, but Nancy will be a little more prepared, maybe even the memo too, to kind of
Well,
explain
and
how that
again,
works.
this is a great primer. I'm loving the framework we've got.
And I'm just not sure what you mean by out of how many, what? Like, we have 1,500.
What percentage of either the acreage or actually more reasonable of property taxpayers are covered by metered water versus well water?
Oh.
No, just to get a sense of I don't know the answer to that question. So that's who we're impacting. Is it 10% of the population? Is it 40? It can't be more than that. I don't know. I'd
Right,
like
because the
just
city of
to-
Ellsworth is a ratepayer and all these other ratepayers,
Right.
but then there's the non-ratepayers
Right.
that don't have to, worry about those pieces, and they shouldn't be
So-
charged for
But
them.
yeah, like I got a fire hydrant out by my house and then off the Bucksport Road, I'm not a rapier. But
Interesting.
it benefits
That's-
me,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and we all.
That's
yeah.
what you mean, yeah.
So just to get that understanding of what the system looks like now
Yep.
would be
And I've,
helpful.
And I think that information is in the PUC report that we have to give to the PUC every year, so.
Okay.
should be there.
I'll check it out.
great. We're running a little behind, but we'll go to Danielle, just a brief update on ordinances.
Evening, everyone. Danielle Gift, Director of Planning. Just giving you a brief update on how we're moving forward with the ordinance review process with the consultant. So we have started weekly meetings with them. We did a kickoff meeting with them 2 weeks ago. We're working in 2 phases. The first one is really just looking at clarity and enforceability and bringing our ordinance back into legal compliance with some recent updates on the state level. That looks like we'll have that completed in December. It'll come to the city council meeting for approval, planning board before that. The second phase will start concurrently, probably next month. And that's looking at any sort of technical reforms or housing law legal compliance. And that should end in June. And that's when we'll bring it back to city council for the second part of the reviews. So I just wanted to give you a timeline of updates. We are soliciting input, both from the planning board, the Arbor Commission, anyone else who kind of has skin in the game, so that we have some topics to bring back to the consultant, make sure that we're hitting our priorities.
Yeah, and this one,
Nice and brief.
I think there's kind of the quick version of this, which is, the state laws we need to change, some of the comp plan, the business attraction plan, the housing needs assessment. They had some specifics there that are, size of parking lots in Ellsworth, heights of building, some other pieces that are kind of red flags from developers that are hurting us, that aren't really, this isn't 1987 and Christmas Day and there's gonna be, 90 cars in the malls. It's a different, people wanna build differently here now. So there's some pretty straightforward ones that are just, they could be contentious, we'll see, but we wanna get the box checked on those. There's also some process changes, I feel like, under consideration here too, on how we, encourage development, how we get them through our boards, and commissions and staff on just, the white glove service. That is the piece that's broadening our tax base. I know, there's a story in the Ellsworth American about property value increases that might drive the tax rate lower, but that is not, less dollars out of people's pockets. But you add new businesses, you add new residential, you broaden your tax base enough, and Ellsworth, 36% growth in population since 2000, 26% higher than the main average. If we can broaden our base enough, that can help lower tax rates even further without just relying on property valuation increases. So looking forward to that project on a macro level, and looking forward to our next. Any questions for Danielle before?
This is great.
Looking forward to our ordinance discussion on a micro level now. And maybe we'll bring up Robert and Troy from our police and code departments to talk a little further on that. I think it was at our last city council meeting, a discussion on roosters and the chickens.
So I think the reason I'm here, I guess we're talking about the ordinance changes, is we've just run into, since this summer, we've had a large increase in this political protests in town, which puts a strain on us as far as supplying people and staff, where the billing goes.
I'm sorry, Troy, I thought we were going to talk the chickens, roosters first, yeah.
We're gonna warm up slowly.
You jumped the gun.
Oh, sorry, if we could switch gears, maybe.
Well, Dave's kind of our chicken expert.
Well, let's swap in Dave then. Let's bring him in. So we have Captain Lloyd, and maybe just for the folks that, weren't here at the council meeting, I hate to pigeon somebody else's remarks. But myself and staff have had some discussions with some folks that are, I think, rightfully concerned about, chickens invading their property with a neighbor. I think a rooster that shouldn't be allowed, but what enforcement mechanisms do we have for that? It's been a continuing piece, and this is something that if we can change our ordinances or add additional pieces, but had the police and code department kind of look into more based on their conversations with us, but also to council, so that they can get to, back to some peace and quiet and their property as quickly as possible. And I'll send it over to Robert and Captain Lord for an update there.
All right. I can start very briefly with that. We did, in the particular example we had last month, we did, I think we have dealt with the situation. And I sent him a notice of violation, and he told me he took care of the situation, and I have not observed any more chickens on the loose. So that particular situation, I think, is resolved. The larger problem we've had is that the city doesn't actually have an animal control officer at the moment. I don't know if Captain Lord wants to talk about that in more detail, but.
Well, yeah, we've, a lot of the enforcement mechanisms that I found, there's two ordinances that would have applied to the situation we had on Birch Ave. One was the flower beds and the property being damaged by the birds, and the second one was the noise from the roosters at all hours of the day and night. Both of those are covered by ordinance. We have ordinance on those for nuisance animals under our animal control ordinance. As far as the birds being on property, I found a state statute that applies. One that we could, after jumping through several hoops, we would be able to actually issue a summons for. But all of these kind of fall under the auspices of an authorized animal control officer to investigate and issue, which currently we don't have. I know the chief and the deputy chief have been working on some options. We don't have an option in place yet, but that is something that they are exploring.
Yeah, so our animal control officer no longer works with us, so it's quite a process to get that certification. So we're kind of in limbo now. We've actually talked with Robert today and his staff about maybe them being involved, because Lori was the ACO before, because they go to a lot of these ordinance calls with the animals, so it makes sense to have somebody in his department, ACO, then we accompany him. So we've got a couple different options we're working on right now, so hopefully we'll have that taken care of fairly soon.
So I guess my question, maybe we can bring up our residents too that brought forward some initial complaint. Like, how quickly do we think that'll happen? And also, like, from the code side too, do we need additional enforcement mechanisms for fines on this types of activity? Because from what I've been told, like, this has happened multiple times for them. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what are the mechanisms we can really get them, citizens that this won't happen?
So I think that as far as for code, the biggest problem is that we don't have an ACO. So like I'm not actually authorized to use. We have Chapter 22 public nuisance statute. It's not really statutes, but with I can't enforce those without an ACO, and we don't have one in the city. It wouldn't be me enforcing anyway, but even if I was I have to become the ACO to enforce those. We don't have one. That's where the loophole or the gray area was, where I can send them a notice of violation and ask these people to please remove their chickens, but short of a several month process, there isn't much I could do as the code enforcement officer, where the ACO has more direct control, more direct ability to affect the situation.
And I know, Chief, you talked about there might be a way to contract out with this with another ACO that's working with the county, or?
Yeah, the deputy chief's been working on talking with the county ACO, contracting with the county. Got kind of like a sample MOU. I mean, you might want to stand up and speak to it, but Yeah, we've been exploring that just to see what the cost would be, and he has the figures on the cost, you know.
Yeah, so we deal with roughly 250-ish animal complaints a year. About 100 of those are hot dog complaints, so we're looking at like 150 calls that we might be able to collaborate with the Hancock County ACO. He does all the surrounding towns. They're willing to do some type of trial run with us to make sure that would work for us, but there would be an upfront fee of about $2,500. And then there's a hourly fee with mileage for each call that he would go to in Ellsworth. But that would also help with the dog licensing and things like that. We bring in about $3,500 annually on dog licenses, so that might be able to help offset some costs for that. Part of the problem is we get somebody trained. We've had 2 people trained in the police department as the ACO, and they've both left for different reasons, and we're back looking around here trying to figure out what we're going to do to get somebody through that class, let alone with some of our staffing issues. It's just it may be more beneficial to either go with the Hancock ACO and try to collaborate there, or maybe even work with Robert and his team there and see if somebody wanted to be able to do it in that place. But a couple things we're trying to figure out.
And I might say both, maybe, so we can get this solved in the near term, but then also have a little redundancy in the system, so. But I don't know if the 2 citizens, if they had anything they want to say, has it gotten better lately, or?
It's exactly the same as it was when we came. The rooster is still every single day, and the chickens are out. I don't know whether I heard the code enforcement officer say, that the chicken was solved. But the chickens are solved. They're wandering around every single day in various numbers, sometimes 5 or 6 and sometimes 10, 12. Nothing has changed.
There you go.
Yeah.
Every morning at 4:15, all for like 5 hours outside my window, and I cannot sleep. Every morning, and this I just took with the windows closed. It's every single morning. It has not changed at all.
Yeah, and that's a couple blocks away from here. That's not in,
The rooster is on the adjoining property. I mean, I could just run 20 steps and be at the rooster's mouth.
And I'll be happy to when we step out, I'll get more information and see exactly what's going on there in particular. I thought I had this one mostly solved, but apparently not.
Well, is the issue that you're not coming over and standing there? You're just talking, you're relying on the honesty of the owner? Why do you think that this is not happening?
Well, I think we'll look into it further. We're going to do the ACO as soon as possible. Sure.
Patrick Shea, resident, I live on School Street. I've heard chickens, roosters crow. I have a little experience with this ordinance that I gave Robert, and I think I gave Councilor O'Halloran a copy. And I just showed the deputy chief. It does, this ordinance, I happen to be, at one time, was looking at another parcel of property so that my daughter could go to a better school. My daughter showed chickens, all right? Okay. Realizing that you gotta find the right setbacks and stuff, I sent my wife to the code to find out about the codes. Hence, she come back with this very detailed ordinance regarding chickens, and I stopped on my way back from a dentist appointment, and I picked up the copy, and he also, the code enforcement officer said that they're gonna revisit this because people have geese. And geese squawk, and ducks make noise. But I'm willing to share what I've got with you.
Sure.
It also has the fee structure and a form, and it's on the town of Pittsfield's website. and I wrote down a few things that might be worthwhile, and I'm willing to share that with you.
Yeah, so this is
Instead of
Pittsfield.
being part of the problem, I'd like to be part of the solution.
You're saying this is part of Pittsfield's?
That's town of Pittsfield's ordinance about poultry, chickens, actually. It specifically says chickens. And they limit you to the number of hens you're allowed. Roosters are not allowed. If they find out you've got a rooster, you get tagged with a $100 fine, and they take the bird. And the code enforcement department is in very good working relationships with the fire department and the police department. So you've got a health officer, you've got a code enforcement officer, you've got law enforcement. It's very hard to keep a code animal control officer. Many towns in central Maine share animal control officers, and they budget as well. So it's a working deal, and it's pretty standard that if a animal control officer has to go from Burnham to Pittsfield or Clinton or Benton, you get tagged with the extra mileage of his vehicle, his or her vehicle. But it specifically says, no roosters. This is what happens if you have that. That's one fine. If they have to go back because of an issue, per se, they happen to have another rooster crow. That's a separate offense. It's not concurrently. So, and it's really in-depth. It tells you where, how far, and if you want to put a shed, a coop for them, and it's too close to the property line, you can't get the 20-foot setback.
Yep.
You have to get your abutting landowners to agree to that.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Shea. This is something maybe I'll talk to Robert. I think I would like to see some.
No, I mean, we only got 2 code enforcement officers, and one's training, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, we've seen some rotations in the animal control office. I would like, I don't know if council disagrees here. I'm usually.
Consistency with a county person sounds like a good strategy.
And it has no bearing on your right to provide agriculture, or food for yourself. It does spell out in that you can't sell the eggs. No operation of selling eggs. Those are all for your private use in the residential areas and the commercial residential areas, okay? And it also spells out, you do not slaughter the birds.
Well, we're looking at this more, and we'll kind of. Yes, ma'am.
Just the, roosters are not allowed in my neighborhood. They are not allowed. I'm wondering, could you please, it starts crowing at 4 every morning outside my window and stays all day today, every day, all day, with just periodic quiet. Could you please send somebody over there to remove the rooster? It's one rooster, it's against the law. Could you please send someone over to take that rooster out of there? Remove it, please.
Yeah, we're gonna look into both these things on the immediate activation of an animal control officer, maybe contracting out that might have that authority, but also maybe some of these fines over the long term. So how we solve that. So, Chief, I'll be following up with you and maybe Captain Lord as well. And I'm sorry, we've got to move on, man. We've got a couple more things.
Did John come up so he could weigh in?
Sure, maybe we'll do a couple more minutes.
Counselor Stein is.
Oh, Stein's on there.
John, did you come on to say something or just?
I'm all right.
to be
I'm good.
Okay, thanks.
As you were.
I've gotten to the point now where if the city of Ellsworth can't take action for another X number of months, I've already spent now about $140 in chicken fencing to put around some of my gardens. I might as well be buying fences for him and save the neighborhood. Everybody's mad around my area. And so this is ludicrous. I have lots and lots of flower gardens, why am I doing this? I might as well just buy out Farm and Home Supply without, take them over
And sorry, we-
show him how to put them up at
We,
his house.
we do have one more person that, did you want to say something as well, where you also,
10 years ago, I had chickens, and I live in downtown Ellsworth, and I came before you all, and I got permission for my hens and no rooster. That was 10 years ago, it was on the books. So why can't you write a letter to this homeowner and say, get rid of your roosters, or else?
and we,
We have.
we have sent a letter, that's kind of where we're at now, which is, when the letter doesn't work, how do you amp it up? It sounds like we need to get this ACO activated immediately, but also maybe there's some more teeth.
And he doesn't seem to know how to put up a fence.
Thank you to Mr. Shea for this piece. Under our next kind of micro ordinance side of things, if, do you want to talk about the bicycles on the, or e-bikes on our sidewalks? Is that you, Troy?
E-bikes on sidewalks, we have no ordinance on bicycles. Anywhere that I could find, reading everything and then using the AI assistant to make sure I didn't miss something on bicycles. So there is no ordinance on bicycles, and there are no state laws that we could.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Excuse me? Could you please take that outside? Thank you.
Sorry, ma'am, if we could, we're trying to move on if you,
Well, I can't move on.
to the next subject. So I guess just to back up a little bit, I've met with a gentleman maybe about 3 weeks ago now, maybe a month ago now, talking about e-bikes that have been on the sidewalks and bikes on the sidewalks, and like a lot of these micro ordinances, like their bikes shouldn't be allowed on sidewalks, especially e-bikes. In some ways, those are almost like little electric motorcycles at certain speeds, and it's for walking. And sure enough, we both researched it, we've looked around, and I think Deputy Chief Willie has confirmed that we don't have those ordinances in the books. I've also been, like I've said, I'm usually more in the deregulate, ad regulation, but this one seems like there's a safety aspect to it. I wouldn't mind coming back to the council with an ordinance change here to say no, to make it clear that there's no e-bikes or bikes allowed on sidewalks. I don't think we're going to be having tons of sting operations, although the chief was an undercover agent at some point. So, but I did want to kind of preview with council. Is that the kind of thing we'd be okay with coming back to council for an ordinance change potentially? But I don't know if anybody had any issues with bikes.
It's just, I think it'll be tough. I get the e-bikes, and I feel like e-bikes are better on a road than regular bikes. And putting an ordinance out there that says bikes can't be on sidewalks, yet we don't have safe roads for bikes is a tough one. But it's something we need to address.
So maybe just the e-bikes is the.
I can offer something while we're developing this and reach out to the Bicycle Coalition of Maine. We can't be the only municipality that's dealing with this, and look for what they may know about what's happening with ordinances in other
Sure.
municipalities to see. And you're right, I mean, I have an e-bike and I have a road bike. I don't ride any on the roads because it's not safe the way that we currently have it. A couple of years from now, hopefully it'll be better because of the work that we're doing with other projects. But in the meantime, I don't ride them on sidewalks either. I think that having e-bikes as different from the others, my road bike weighs 20 pounds, my e-bike weighs 70. That's different. It's a whole different animal, let alone the speed that it can go. So I'll reach out to Bicycle Coalition of Maine and see what they've got that could be helpful in addressing that. Neither should be on the sidewalks. Sidewalks are for walkers, as somebody walks around town. It's not appropriate, so I'm surprised really there isn't a state law on that, but I'll see what I can find that might be helpful.
It's not considered like a motorized vehicle, but you can't ride on a snow, on a.
It would have to be over so many volts, milliamp volts. There's a regulation on the size of those things, yes. And then they'd have to be registered for the road.
The gentleman right there,
Thank you.
comment?
Jim Pendergast, thank you for calling me a gentleman, I was the one that brought it to his attention. And the reason I brought it to his attention is that I want you guys to think about this long and hard. I was walking, I can't run anymore, so I was doing some walking. I was coming from friends and family into the traffic on the sidewalk, and this guy comes by me at Mach speed as fast as the thing would go up on the sidewalk, I guess. And I didn't know he was there. So they don't make any noise. So if I'd have taken a step to the left, he'd ran right over me. It happened to me twice, almost in the same spot. Now, what was interesting to me is that I was out on I want to be safe. I was on the Ellsworth trails. I bought a picture in to show it to the city manager. It says no motor vehicles on the trails. So I asked Mrs. Moat, and she said years ago that they put that on there for motorcycles and e-bikes.
And snowmobiles.
Snowmobiles. With the proliferation of these e-bikes, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And then we have to find out where the liability lies, because you can't get liability insurance on those e-bikes. I talked with an insurance agent today, and it would come under your homeowners if the person had any. So I think it's really incumbent on this council to come up with an ordinance to keep these 12-speed, 10 speeds, and motorized vehicles off the sidewalks. Another example is I was on High Street driving. A guy comes by me on a scooter. He's on the sidewalk. He gets to the light that's in front of Shaw's. It was red. He crossed over into traffic on the other side to go down the other side of the road. No signal, no nothing. We're going to have a catastrophic thing happen here one of these days, and we need to pay attention to it as a city, and you guys as city councilors. So I appreciate you taking my time, giving me the time. I have a bunch of more notes here, but I'm not going to keep. I know what it's like to sit there and want to go home.
Thank you, Jim.
We'll want to look, I think these bikes are classified by voltage and/or weight and/or if pedaling is required with or without a throttle. But I know, for example, Acadia requires that only, I want to say, class 1 e-bikes are allowed on carriage roads, for example. So we'll just want to keep classifications in mind, I think, because there are different levels, and some might be more reasonable to have on sidewalks than others.
If you look in the summertime, when we have 10, 20, 30 bikes with flags on them, these organizations that ride the trails and come up here, you don't see one of those guys on the sidewalk, because they respect the laws, because they know that being on a bike, they have to abide by the traffic laws.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's why these workshops are helpful too. Was a surprise that like any bikes are allowed on sidewalks. The sidewalks are for people to walk on, and I can see when you don't have good bike infrastructure why people want to be there, but also like that's not a lane for a bike.
We might look in, there's one city in the same Maine that has that type of ordinance, and it's Algonquin. To my understanding, what I was reading, so I don't know how they're, I don't want to give these guys any more of a job than they have already. But we probably can't afford to have a bike person to go out and arrest people that are.
Oh, Troy and I were planning a sting today. We were going to get our bike outfits on.
There's kids riding up State Street, like 5, 7, 8-year-olds. They should not ride their bike on the road. They should ride them. They should keep them on the sidewalk. I think you want to just be careful about like what we force those kids off.
Yeah, an age. Can you have it unless you're.
There's tons of kids that are riding their bike up State Street to go to the park. Don't make them go in the road.
Yeah, and our bike infrastructure isn't.
No, they're supposed to wear helmets too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's tons, right? Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm
Well,
not sure 5, 6, 7-year-olds should be out there riding by themselves anyway.
They definitely should be.
absolutely. My son, 7, he got bike freedom this summer, and it was the best thing in the world for the parents too. So good conversation. I think we'll look into Gunkwitz, and I could see. Yeah, this will be an interesting one. The e-bikes, maybe that's kind of where we land on the one to restrict. Those are heavier, and they are, but some good. We'll have more debate on that. I feel like this and the chickens ones. It's not always the most macro. We do discuss housing and these other pieces, but these are issues that obviously matter to our citizens' lives too, and we need to work as a city to kind of do better service in this category. So we'll be looking more and probably bring it back, I'd say this one for the November meeting, to talk about bikes. And there's some near-term things on the chickens and the roosters, but there might be an ordinance change there as well. Anything else before we move on? We've got just a couple other things here. I think I'll have a lot more discussion for the city council on the ban. I know we've had a few conversations with Amy, and this is an output of the budget conversation as well when we were talking about kind of our next big steps with capital improvement. That the two things that really came to the top of the list out of the budget discussion for our next bond ban consideration would be the track and potentially tanker 4, but also engine 2, is it? Or engine 7. You know, the track piece, and maybe Chief, you can just talk about the engines a little bit. You know, we've got about 1.3 million as the full cost of that project. I think we've talked with the council. We want to go about a third to be funded by Amy and our teams trying to get some private donations for the track. About a third of it to be funded out of the schools' capital improvement line items for next year, and then the third from the cities. That's kind of the general mix. We're going to ask for up to 1.3 million. I know, Steve, you've talked before about, you know, these are bans. We don't have to draw them all down, but better than coming back twice for these. So it's main track and tennis kind of provided us for some of the quotes here. It's for the track, replacement of the actual track, but then also some field to the soccer field will have to be kind of replaced as well. And then there's some ADA accessibility upgrades that we'll also have to make for that piece. And then the next big capital piece, I know, Chief, you want to talk a little bit more about the trucks.
And did you mean to skip over the mass gathering?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not mean to do that. So let's go back.
The poor thing, it shows up too early, then it gets skipped.
I was looking at the time. I was looking at the time and went to my
I know,
schedule. And the chief already talked about mass gatherings. Yeah.
He said the words, that's not the same.
Well, I can be quick. So our mass gathering, we just wanted to kind of bring this up where we're talking about ordinance changes. We've had kind of a rejuvenated look at mass gathering due to some of the political environment. Just for an example, we've had to go to these We Rise events 5 different times, and it's cost the city $2,500 roughly from our budget, paying overtime to have people work those. So, and there's some other stuff that we tallied up here, not counting like the Christmas parade, the Memorial Day parade, that's all budgeted for, but there's a lot of other different things that happen. And I kind of wanted to see some clarification in the mass gathering, on billing, how we bill for this. I mean, are we gonna bill as the city, or are we gonna bill to the private people who sponsor these events? If people sponsor these events in the past, we work up a bill, what it costs us. For example, our officers that's governed by the CBA that's signed currently is $90 per hour with the fringe. And we charge $15 an hour per cruiser with a minimum of 4 hours. So if an outside, something other than the city, wants to have a function at the park, Knowlton Park, they go through the mass gathering process, permitting process, they get the permit, they hire 2 of us, 4 of us, whatever I determine they need there. Or the other option is that we just allow everybody to, when they do these, they either 1, don't have to have us, or 2, they're billed, we pay our guys overtime rate, and that comes out of our budget. Which, if we choose to go that route, we've talked about this, that we're gonna have to address it with a different line item in the budget for next year. It gets fit, right now, we're up to $17,319 that we spent on outside details, or that we will be spending on outside details, and we've billed out $5,961. So there's no real clarification in this mass gathering as far as when we're required, when the fire department's required. If you read the mass gathering, which is section 412 of this, it says that as a condition of approval, police and fire department may require that police and fire personnel be present during the event at the applicant's expense. The only exemption is if it's an event put on by the city or the school. So I think there's some changes. There's got to be, you guys might have to take a look at the ordinance, see how you want to change it, how we pay for these things, or how other people pay for this.
Yeah, and there's kind of mass gatherings and then parades, like its own separate ordinance altogether. It's like a separate chapter, and that one doesn't really have any kind of, like, I don't think financial reimbursement pieces in there, but we do charge some people when we do controls, and so there's also like a customer aspect to this. Like if we're having more and more events in the cities, people want to do things and they don't really fit into our right buckets. And, you know, Troy and I have I'd probably say we've had this conversation 3 to 5 times on, there's some gray here, how do we handle this? And we wanted to try to make it as black and white, and like, these are our policies, this is when you have to go to city council, this is when you have to get approval from this. And some of them we can't enforce, like I think it's the No Kings protest, some of these, like we talked earlier, like we do have, if it requires police details, we've had to send them for, you know, if there's over 250 people, we want to have, you know, in case something were to happen, whether it's No Kings or whether it's another organization over 250 people. But there's a free speech element to it too. And, you know, talking to the legal, I don't even think we can enforce that to, you know, make somebody pay for which is more in the free speech category. So why do we have these things in the books in this process if we can't even make so we have to budget for it accordingly and have a process that's within the law, that's clear, that council has visibility into. I know I've talked to you all, I think, a finance committee meeting once, where should we charge a group, you know, that's doing, you know, very, you know, the Shriners do things here. There's other groups that we kind of feel like this is a big community service for, but we want to kind of just bring better clarity to that. So I'd say that's probably also going to be coming up in a city council meeting as we prepare for next year. I think we'll probably give you a little bit of a lull in the mass gatherings as the weather changes a bit around here, but you never know.
I have a question about, you say 17,000 and you build out 5,200. Did you collect 5,200, or does that go in, is it hard to collect what you bill out?
No, it hasn't been hard to collect, because some things we require they pay up front. For example, the Jesus Reigns parade that they had in town, you know, the cost on that was roughly $3,400, and, you know, it requires 12 of our people. So, you know, rather than have 12 people come out not knowing what they're going to get, it's going to be paid or not, we make sure they pay up front.
So when you say build, it's pretty certain that you receive that money?
Yeah,
as well?
that's what we have received, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's another question here. I mean, that one too is on par with like the Christmas parade in terms of, I think, 12 officers, a ton of different intersections that need to be locked down. So,
But there's things that come up throughout the year. There's just different organizations that request our presence, 1 or 2 people that, and, you know, just want to make it fair across the board, basically, is what I'm asking, that we put in the ordinance, that we keep, if we're going to build one outfit, we should be billing the other outfit, or we're not going to bill them, and the city's going to pay it. I mean, that's really what we're looking for guidance.
maybe I'll bring the chief up to talk a little bit about the engines. I know we're a little bit over time, but if council doesn't mind hanging out for a couple minutes. Anything you were wondering, chief, as we head into the next cycle that?
Sure. So, back in the beginning of the well, this has been going on for years and years and years, so this is even pre-me. However, the discussion has been about replacing a fire truck, bring a new frontline engine into place. Early in the budget cycle, I had spoke with the deputy city manager, and we were looking at tanker 4, which is going on close to 30 years old, engine 7, which is coming up on 20 years old. The original idea was that we were going to replace engine 7 because that's a reserve engine. It's sitting in storage over at Superior Dock. It only comes out when an engine goes out of service. It comes over here to City Hall and replaces that engine while it's out being repaired. So that was the discussion, is let's replace the reserve engine, and then we take one of the engines that's downstairs, i.e. engine 2, and move engine 2 into reserve status and get another 5 years out of that engine. But now we would have a frontline, brand-new engine that would last us the 9 or 10 years that a typical career fire department of our size and our busyness would gather now. Engine 7, the reason why we're looking at engine 7 also as the replacement instead of tanker 4, is engine 7 only seats 2 people. Our current staffing model is I have 3 people on an engine and 2 people on an ambulance. So if I have to put engine 7 in the City Hall, I now have to divide 3 people into 2 vehicles instead of 1 vehicle. That increases potentials for problems to happen when we're responding to a call. We don't know what's going to happen when we respond to call. It's a very dangerous time when we're responding with lights and sirens. The less vehicles I have on the road, the better. It's safer. So during the budget cycle, we wound up on the path into tanker 4 because it is a 30-year-old vehicle. The reason why we got on that path is because engine 2 was out for repairs. When it came back from repairs, we were told from the dealer that it was good to go. Since then, just in the first quarter of FY26, we've already spent over 10 grand on that truck. In FY25, it was over 30 grand for that truck, not including the vehicle accident. So engine 2, 1 is the most used engine here in the city, especially since you guys took over EMS in 2019. It was running on every call until we got an ambulance. We've slowed down the mileage, we've slowed down the number of engine hours that we put on that truck, but she's showing the wear and tear. So what I'm recommending is that we do go back to the original discussion of replacing engine 7 as the reserve engine. Moving engine 2 into reserve, we've got it in a good place now. Move it into reserve so we can maintain life on it, but bring a new engine into place back here to City Hall. And there, if anything happens in the meantime, such as another engine goes out of service, at least we still have a frontline engine that can seat everybody appropriately and still maintain the level of service that we provide to the city.
So yeah, just a bit of a switch on the priority for the band and the fire department of the engine versus tanker 4. I think, and we Sarah and I also did some lunches with all the fire shift crews and talking to the chiefs. It's the oldest tanker 4, but also seems to be very reliable.
Don't jinx us. Don't jinx us.
Knock on wood at this.
Right now, engine 7 as a reserve engine has cost us more than tanker 4 as a frontline tanker.
Right. So will be a little bit of a shift, but wanted to give council just a little heads up that, when you see that, that's kind of, and again, that we're not making that decision. This is just the band funding to give authorization. We'd still go through our procurement processes and final estimates and, before any of that band could be expended. This is just the first step there.
Great, thank you.
I think we'll break 2. Then we have the initial copy of the agenda. I think the cannabis use ordinance will be the big one for this. We're working to kind of finalize some of the legal pieces there. Got more community center in case, maybe just a little more discussion on there. I don't think we'll be at action for that yet, but wanted to kind of have it up there. We've got the public works director on the bids.
Can I interrupt just for a second?
Yeah.
Who is Richard Fortier with 50 years of service?
That's Captain Richard Fortier.
Holy cow.
Yep.
He's on
He's a volunteer. He's been with as a volunteer with the city for September makes 50 years.
Wow.
Well, October makes 50 years. Yep.
Thank you. And well, we will thank you. I couldn't let that pass, Charlie. so-
No worries, no worries. Some of the other things we've talked about here already, so hopefully that'll be a good preview for that meeting. And also we're canceling the next kind of standing workshop on Mondays, just because a new council is going to be potentially seated just after that. And, we'll have an organizational meeting. I know Ebby and I are working on just kind of prepping new council packets, onboarding, kind of optimizing that process a
So
little
you're
bit
saying
more.
there won't be one November 3rd?
There won't be one
It is
November.
my birthday, and I'm greatly disappointed I won't be able to spend it with all of you. I will try to find something else as much fun.
Oh, and Mike, I think, that's, I'm assuming you want to talk Baylor's.
Yeah, just really quickly, today we had a bid opening for balers and for a butt fusing machine for the water department to fuse water line. And we ran into a snag where there was an accident on 1A today, and it delayed some people that were hand delivering bids, and it also delayed the UPS and FedEx. And so we received multiple bids after the bid opening. And I didn't look at them, but I would prefer just to reject the bids and set a new bid date, and going forward, have the bid dates be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, not a Monday, and also to have them in the afternoon so the UPS and FedEx have time to get the bids here if there's an issue. But I don't want to leave a good bid on the table because there was an accident on 1A and they couldn't get it here. And some of the bids were sent by FedEx on Thursday, and they still got here late. And they were sent overnight mail. So I'm not sure what this, other than the accident on 1A, I'm not sure why well, we're not open on the weekend, so I would probably explain it. But, so that's my request to the council, if they're in favor. If not, we'll go with the low bids, and I'll just bring it to the council, and we'll approve the low bids, or you'll have the opportunity to approve the low bids. But there are 4 bids, I think, a couple for the balers, a couple for the butt fusing machine that came in late, so they're disqualified. And so, I'd rather not, leave a good bid on the table because of the exigent circumstances. So, just asking the council's opinion before we move forward to the council meeting on, do I come and bring the only bids that we received, or would we be more comfortable to reject the bids and tell them that we need them submitted to us on a different date and time so we can make sure we get all the bids?
Do you have in there, Mike, that electronic bids are accepted, or is it
They're
all
not
have to be all
accepted.
paper?
We've had that in our, I think Steve actually can speak to that, like no electronic bids are accepted.
Yeah, they all come in, and we do the bid opening for that. For proposals, we've done emailed in, but it's kind of one of the reasons that I want to go to an online sealed bid process, super transparent, eliminates this issue.
My question about that process is, if you come to council, couldn't the council decide if they wanted to make an exception in this case for the circumstances and then go forward?
Yeah, I just didn't want to violate our process, so that's why I'm asking now.
Or if
If
the
you guys
bidder-
all say we want to look at all the bids that came in even afterwards, it just will open us up to the guys that got them in on time saying, hey,
What are we allowed to do?
Yeah, I think from the policy, I think we'd basically be violating our own bid policy because we'd be making an exception that isn't specified in the bids. We can make an exception on quality, but there's no exception for lateness due to accidents, even though we'd have to reject all bids, start again.
I don't want to do that, but I don't want to violate our policy either. Step in that can of worms.
What do you do if there's like a snow day, if the deadline had been today and there was a snow day and the office was closed? How do you manage that,
In that
like
case, no one
outside
could do it.
circumstances?
Yeah, on that one, it would be simple because no one could do it.
Okay.
But because some people got their stuff here on time
Yeah.
or got it
Right.
here the day before or whatever.
Yeah, so it is.
Yeah, and everybody's trying to
It
make
makes
that.
it- I just think it makes it really not fair, honestly. If people did their due diligence and they got everything here first, they got here in time, it's kind of like the person that's always late for work and they're saying, well, there's traffic, well, then plan for traffic, right? so.
Yeah, no, I would do whatever you want. I'm
Yeah,
perfectly fine.
I remember going to a bid opening with my father. He was an hour late. That's the last thing you want to do is tell Phil Shea all that work he did. You're an hour late because of an accident. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of on Mike Michelle's,
Yeah.
maybe one of her last, she's not gonna be at this next meeting,
I
but
know, I'm-
But the rule's the rule.
the rule's the rule, and yeah,
it is.
that's the way we gotta go with this one. Nobody who bid this first round broke any rules, and it wasn't like a process, we've had in the past where the city's made a process error, but this was,
No, I mean,
got-
we may be leaving a really good bid on the table.
we'll get the bids, I know, but we'll just judge the ones that we have in.
Ask me, Michelle,
Move
one
that
of my
at the
favorite
council
phrases.
meeting?
I love deadlines,
No, I think
especially that
we'll
whoosh
keep it
you
on the
guys
council
gotta
meeting,
go
we'll just use the bids that we have in, instead of rejecting all, and just move forward, because that was
All
the,
right,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
that was the rules, and the people that played by the rules got bids in, and, the city process was clean, so we'll.
All right, so I'm just bringing the low bids in and I'm asking for other approval.
What bids it received?
The bid you received.
Yeah, and considering how many times I've had this bid to open, Danielle and I have had great conversation with a firm that'll solve this problem for us forever. It'll just be an online version of this, and there's so much staff time goes into these pieces too, and this really could be a digital online process.
And the other way to think of this too is you may have a low bid there and that person gets pissed and gets mad and doesn't
Technical
rebid, and they were the low bidder.
No,
That
I
could
agree.
happen, too.
No, I'm saying
So you
it's,
have to
it's
be-
definitely pros and cons to whatever way you want to go.
If there's a city mess up in the process, I feel like we have to do the rebid. But with this one, where it's just kind of a fluke, we
It's
gotta,
just that we had a bunch from, if there had been one came in afterwards, it probably wouldn't have caught my attention, but like 4 came in, like, so that's, I figured I'd bring it to you guys to see what you want to do.
thank you. I know we're 15 late, but we've got a lot of good information to come to the next council meeting and
Yeah,
rock it out. So, thank you all.
thank you.
Thanks.